Hey everybody, it's Bruce and Graham here from WaterBear, and we're going to be talking with Rob today about pedal boards and this kind of the way you think about putting them together and the choices that you've got. And we're also celebrating the launch of our bass department because we are launching a BA Honours degree in commercial music in bass. Woo! Yay! Graham, shall we just have a look at... I know me and you are very different, aren't we? I'm quite traditional.
Yes.
You are anything but traditional.
Mm-hmm.
So shall we start with your super interesting pedal board and tell us how it all works and the philosophy behind it, as well as the sort of choice of the individual pedals?
Absolutely, yeah. Right, so I think first thing to do, if I turn off everything that I can, because I can't turn them all off, because this guy here doesn't have a switch on it, which is handy because I really like it and I like it being on all the time, so that's quite lucky. Start at this end. I have my tuner first, just because I do like to have the cleanest unprocessed tone going into the tuner. Then after that, into my Cali 76 bass compressor. Again, that's usually on most of the time. I think that's the case with quite a lot of bass players. It does help us to sound a little bit more even and a little bit more pro, dare I say it. And then leaving from there, I go into my Daring Edge activator, which is essentially an exciter that makes everything a little bit brighter and cuts out some of the mids. In this case, I've got the EQ range. I'm cutting out the upper mids. And then after that, I deal with these two guys together usually. And this is where I try and get my amp tone from. So I've got the Dark Glass Alpha Omega, which for a majority of the time is on, and that gives a little bit more of that bottom end realness feel that I kind of miss not having an amplifier. And then I've got a choice of my various distortions, fuzzes and overdrive tones. There's the distortion on here, which is I've got set to be quite fuzzy, and then I've got two varying degrees of gnarliness and clang and bite coming from here. Then after that, if I had my computer with me today and I was doing one of my Keeper's Brew gigs, I would have that connected to this pedal, and this is just a simple MIDI controller. So all of my signal leaves here, goes to my computer on stage, and this can turn on any number of effects that I have running in my session. So I'm just going to play through them for you a bit so you can hear what they're all doing. So at the moment, this is just the Nathan East in place. Which, I think you'll agree, is quite a nice, round, tight sound anyway. But then adding in the compressor just livens things up a bit whilst tightening things up a bit at the same time, which is rather handy.
So from a sonic point of view, it's got richness and depth, and you haven't lost anything.
I absolutely love it. Then going on from that, the Edge activator, like I say, is basically an enhancer, like an exciter, sorry. And I use that mainly for slap stuff, just to get a little bit more bite at the top. And then from there, if I bring in the preamp and EQ section of the Dark Glass together, this is kind of my sound most of the time. And again, I'm using this just to fill in that hole of an amplifier.
Yeah. Then
if I really want to sort of knock some windows out, I've got these guys here, which is my sort of super gnarly dirt grind sound. I've just trademarked that. And then with that off, I've got a slightly more subtle sort of fuzzy saturated amp sound I can have as well. Quite different from this distortion sound. I've got clang, and then I've got warm fuzz.
Do you know what's interesting about all these tones is they are really exciting. It makes you go, which is what you want.
That's the idea. Yeah.
You know, it makes me want to play bass, even though I don't play bass.
Excellent. Well, there we go.
guitar rig is pretty traditional. It's been the same for 30 years, nearly.
Blimey.
More or less. They're all old Boss pedals, and I've got rooms full of old boutique pedals and all stuff, but I tend to do everything by ear, so if I like the sound of it, I'll come back to it. And I've tried a million flanges, a million octaves, a million delays, overdrives like we all have. But I just keep coming back to these old Boss ones, and I spoke to Roland the other day, and they told me that their biggest competitor is themselves.
Interesting.
Because the pedals don't go wrong, and you can buy them on eBay, you know. So, and that's been my experience. I've stomped on them all over the world, done million tours, and they sound great, and I wouldn't compromise sound for anything. Primarily they're here because they sound better than anything else I can find, but the fact that they keep going is occasionally you have to replace a switch.
Yeah.
You know. So before I switch anything on, I think my biggest contribution to my sound is this. So this is an output valve. So for what I do, which is out and out classic rock in that Paul Kossoff Thin Lizzy kind of way, I want to hit this output valve in the right way with the least kind of compromise to my signal. So I don't like effects loops. I would like to be able to do a gig with no effects at all and just turn the amp up. I could just about do that. But it's all about that, and then all the pedals I've got are about driving the preamp valves on this in a certain way, so they're not sounds in their own right. What I don't do is run the amp as a slave.
Right.
So the amp and the other parts, as well as the tube, that's a KT66. The most common valves in a Marshall or a Vox would be the EL34s. These are a little bit more muscly. The physical size of them, I think, has an effect. But you're a tech, Graham. Have you used these type of valves? And
not a huge amount, mostly because a lot of stuff I do is more sort of metal and more extreme bands like Carcass and all that, so a lot of it's 6L6s.
Right. A bit faster.
And then I guess any of the more sort of retro sounding guys, like you say, it's EL34s.
Yes, because they've got a bit of sag. We always talk about this thing, sag, and I think it's a magic thing for what I do. So that's really important. And the other thing is this. Just the tone pot, the volume pot, because the connection to my sound is largely that and that, really. And so my little finger's always on it. It says tone on its volume, but I actually use the volume pot as a tone. I love that Hendrixy thing where you've got your amp flat out, but your guitar's down a bit. That's suppressed power. And I know that on records, I hate it when people are playing clean sounds on 10. I can hear this horrible. I just think, why didn't you just back it off to 8 where it just sounds a bit nicer? So that's the fundamentals of it. So I haven't done anything on the board yet. Now we're in here, I haven't cranked the amp up. So that's a little bit preampy for my taste. But I want it to be able to crunch a bit and then clean up. And my sound is very middly and it's defined, but it's a bit like early Brian May, I suppose. That's what I'm kind of going for. Right. Because I played a lot with horn sections and keyboards, and also I want it to sound good at the end. By the time it's come through the PA and it's at the back of a big stadium or whatever it is, or a little gig, I want people to hear the pick hitting the string. So the only thing we could do with that is crank it right up, which we won't do now. But that'll kick off the harmonics from the back end of the amp. So what have we got on the board? A stock Crybaby. I choose everything by ear, and I will be like everyone else, but I'll be drawn in by hype. But very often when I actually get it on the board and listen to it really carefully, it's not as revolutionary as you think. This guitar setup, you could have done it more or less in about 1965, I think. But what I like about the wah is that the Crybaby is very expressive. So it just does the job. You have to chop the feet off, the little annoying rubber feet. None of this, I went through a phase of true bypassing everything. And again, some of these pedals are sort of modded a little bit to make them true bypass. I've just done it by ear. So I have someone fiddle about with it, plug it all in, listen to it carefully. If it sounds better, I'll leave it, and if it doesn't sound very good, I'll just shift it about.
Right.
Even individual patch leads seem to make a difference.
Oh, totally.
So, building a board, the order's usually pretty fundamental, isn't it? It's important. So I tend to go into a wah, slightly different to you, I put my tuner in the middle, because if I want to get rid of a load of noise, and then start with that, you know, then I can do it like that. So, and also if I need a harmonic to pop out for tuning, sometimes I can get it to be more accurate with a bit of that. So Crybaby going in first, then the Crybaby goes into whatever I'm using for overdrive. This is like a preampy sort of thing. And that reminds me of a Neve board. It's got a big fat chocolatey analogy kind of.
And what's this? The Crackle OK.
Well, it's made by Zenvex, and they seem to think it's all right for it to crackle. So they got loads of complaints about it apparently. So they had to put on the pedal it says Crackle OK, but I don't think it really is okay. but what this is a super duper hard-on, I think it's called. It's called a hard-on because it's hard on the amp because the level goes up. So what it's actually doing is giving the amp a right kick in. It's also got 2 channels, and it will. You can drive one into the other, and then it really does. Even at this volume, it'll probably. And if I turn it up a bit, you can see what it's going to want to do. Even at this volume, it wants to do that. It's a little bit fuzzy-wuzzy.
I imagine it's quite ferocious when it's fully cranked at the amp end.
Yeah. It really, again, it kicks those tubes and gets them moving. And then I've just got very addictive to a Boss old OC3, which. See, even with the kind of fair load of gain, as I'm hitting the thing.
What's interesting is how well it's tracking, considering you're going into all this first, you know.
Yeah, I tend to do the octaves tend to go after the overdrive, and I'm looking for, if I'm having tons of gain, I want that clarity still, so that you can have gain for days, but you can hear the pick hitting the string. That's the fundamental question for me. Is in the middle of the whole mix, can you hear the pick hit the string at all times? And I'm not saying that I definitely achieve that, but that's the aim.
That's the goal.
Yeah, a bit of clarity, and then. That's like you. That's the basic sound, but I don't really use any effects most of the time. It's just that. Wah's on 2 or 3 times in the set. I try not to overuse it. I don't want it to be just covering stuff up. I want Wah to be used as a musical vocal effect. You know. I love this old mid 80s Boss high band flanger. I've never found anything. It's I don't know. It's meaty, and I've never found a plug-in that'll do that.
No, that's lovely.
It moves there and sweeps it around the room,
and it works really well with the octave as well.
And you know,
and a classic DD3.
If I lost any of these or they got nicked, it's more likely to get nicked than go down. But anywhere in the world you can pick up these. And the last thing in the chain, I use it very sparingly, but I love the DD3. Again, that's an older one, but what I like about the DD3, you can get your hands on it. which is quite nice in the middle of a set when you, or the end of a set when you want to make a row, you know. And that's it. The fundamental philosophy is I'm not getting the sound off the board. The sound is driving the amp. So we're super excited about this BA Honours degree where you can focus on bass. And we've set up under your guidance, Graham, we've set up an amazing bass department. So if you wanted to do a degree at WaterBear, who would be teaching you bass apart from yourself?
Right, so we've got Aidan Hampson, who, like me, is from Southampton. Aidan has a really good history and depth of knowledge in theory, notation and transcribing.
Good technique as well.
I mean, he's a real monster player, but he really shines in the school side of things, particularly. You know, he's very knowledgeable.
But I think of the bass department or any department, the guitar department is the same. It's like a team, so not one person has all the answers. You know, so you perhaps go to Aidan for technique. I see you, Graham, if you don't mind me saying, as the sort of our inspiration to push the boat out a little bit and be creative with the instruments. And you know, sort of, we want to get the fundamentals in place, and we also want to push the boat out a little bit.
Totally. It's interesting because I actually think the way I look at any kind of creative process, I always think there's three things you have to have in place. And one is like the knowledge of somebody that knows all the dots. Yeah. Then you need the stimulus of somebody tasking you with something.
Yes.
But you also need an imaginative, creative side to that, because when you put all those three together, you get a unique and useful creative thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what between us we've done with the bass department.
Yes.
I think we've made that happen because we've also got Dale Davis has been helping out as well.
Yeah. Now Dale's background, he played bass for Amy Winehouse, but it was also her MD. So when someone's like yourself, when you've got that sort of leadership role in the band, you also have you're not just thinking about bass, you think about the context a lot. Yeah. So Dale's currently playing with Emeli Sandé. So he's out and about and he's an amazing player, so that's super exciting. And then we've also got Melanie from The Wedding Present. She's just set off on tour today. And also Melanie teaches business studies a lot because, I mean, The Wedding Present are an interesting band because the 3 decades of sort of sustainable career. And I think
that's quite an achievement these days.
It is, isn't it? And that's what we're all about. Is that, well, fundamentally, it's about not getting a proper job, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really how I grew up. Yeah.
And then we've got Laurance, who's a professional bass player from Brighton. And Laurance you always need somebody who can fill in the gaps and be the glue, and it's all about looking after individual people.
Yes.
And as well as being an awesome professional bass player, Laurance has got that kind of, I don't know, he's got warmth and he's got the ability to take a bass player from where they are now and help them plan and strategize.
He has a very nurturing personality.
I think that's important, you know.
Yeah, I do.
You know, as well as technique, styles, improvisation, performance, sight reading, learning to mix and master and all that stuff, business studies. There's a couple of other areas I want to talk about. One is the importance of staying well and the focus we have on well-being.
Yeah.
Do you mind just talking through
Absolutely.
Why this is important?
Well, for me it's incredibly important. I've spent the last few years dealing with a whole sort of nest of mental health issues that all stemmed from the way I was touring and the way I was looking after myself, which actually manifested itself in me losing my hearing.
It's an amazing story.
For quite a considerable amount of time. And it turns out, like I told you before, there was nothing wrong with my ears, it was just my brain going, enough, go home.
Yeah, but if it wasn't that, it could be, it could manifest itself in another way.
That's the thing. And then via that, I ended up obviously in a bit of a mess. And it's a very difficult world to live in anyway, but then when you throw in elements like touring and stressful scenarios that musicians find themselves in, it's quite a unique catalyst for all sorts of things that are going to kick off in your head. Yes,
that's right. And I say WaterBear, it's our we've got an opportunity here to really start working on this stuff, how to actually handle it before it becomes a problem. But let's not forget, for young people doing a degree, I mean, a lot of our degree students are older, they're sort of mid-20s, it's quite a tough time.
Of course it is,
So, even while people are doing a degree, it's an issue, and we've just got to be, we've got to work out strategies to be resilient, and that's why we're called WaterBear, because if you don't know, a water bear is a little creature, It's microscopic, but it's more or less indestructible.
Oh, there's nose.
That's what we want. And the other thing I wanted to chat about is that our degree is all about having the skills to be an independent DIY artist. So that's why everybody has to learn about business, everybody has to learn how to record and mix and master and make their own stuff. But within it, there's a big project which is 25% of the degree, and that's where you kind of boutiqueify it,
Yes.
make the degree your own.
Yeah.
And from a bass player's point of view, if you've got an area of interest, be it fretless, be it 5-string, be it 6-string, be it different tunics, be it extreme styles, be it building a pedal board, or running a band and taking that as far as you can, that's where you put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's sort of like a mini masters
Yeah. Yeah.
in
totally.
principle, you know.
So you're taking everything that you're learning along the way,
Yeah.
and then putting it into place for
Yes.
something that's relevant to you. So you're actually going to go away and use your skills.
That's right.
Yeah, it makes total
And that's
sense.
why a lot of people who apply for WaterBear are already in bands and stuff like that, because you know they can make more of that thing, and we can help them get from where get to where they want to be.
Yeah, and it's just helping people streamline their vision of what they want to do. Yeah,
Good
fantastic.
stuff. So if you want to know more about the BA Honours degree in either guitar or bass or drums or songwriting for that matter, then here's the links. Check it out. It might be. There, probably.
He loves it, look. I've just turned up with my entire rig on my back to do a video shoot, looking like a mushroom head, but I'm safe. And now Bruce has stolen my ride.